Our next agenda item then is the police chief requests that I sign a civil service posting certificate, and I guess this is for an exam for the,
Yeah, this is for the sergeant's
Sergeant.
exam. It has to be posted in 5 places, and you have to sign off that
do we need to vote that, or just,
you have to.
I move we
Yeah, probably.
request the chairman to sign the civil service posting certificate.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Superintendent Feeney requests the selectmen vote to sign agreement with DNR General Contracting, Inc., Melrose, Mass., for the placement of bituminous concrete pavement at the new Medfield Town Garage.
You awarded this at the last meeting. This is to sign the contract,
Okay.
actually, for the, and incidentally, I talked to Ken today. He's anticipating that the work on the town, the final coating on the town garage and Route 27 from Granite Street to West Street will be done, I believe it's the second week in September. He talked to the contractor about the possibility of doing 27 at night because of the volume of traffic in the daytime. Now, it would be some inconvenience to the residents of the street, but the contractor was talking about 4 days. 2 of those days would be south of 109, and 2 days would be north of 109.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
So it would be inconvenient in that it would be nighttime work, but it probably would be far less inconvenient than if it tied up the traffic in the daytime.
You'd have all kinds of issues with the school buses then, too.
Well, yeah, I talked to the superintendent about that today and let him know that, suggested he talk to Bobby Kennedy and inform their,
Yeah.
you know, the people that are scheduling the buses and all
Yeah.
the bus routes, the bus drivers, so they can work that out. But if they could do it in the day, at nighttime, it would alleviate both the traffic congestion
Yeah.
in the center, plus also the school bus situation.
The nighttime would be what, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. type thing, or something like that?
Probably something like that.
You know, it'd
yeah.
probably go quicker anyways, because obviously they're not getting distracted by all the traffic and having it as much, you know, obviously.
Right.
for
Yeah.
moving, stuff like
Can we make sure we just notify the abutters on
Talked to
that?
Ken about that today, and he's preparing a notice to send out to all the abutters.
And if we can do that quick enough, if there is an uproar, it gives them a chance at least to come to the selectmen's meeting and we can hear them out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be an inconvenience either way.
But if it's only 2 days,
Yes.
that any one individual would actually have
Right,
that.
and I think if they tried to do it in the daytime, it could take quite a bit longer
Yeah.
because the traffic.
that. Oh, yeah, they'd be working around traffic.
Yep. In fact, I was saying to Ken, perhaps if you did it at night, you could shut down 27 from South Street to 109 and
Yes.
just reroute the traffic down
Yep.
South Street.
Right.
Exactly, then they don't have to worry about anything, they can just concentrate on the road.
Right, yeah.
And actually, between Granite and South, you could reroute it that way also, up Granite and then down South
Yeah,
to
probably.
Ori. I mean, it's kind of, there'd be kind of a patchwork thing, but
Yeah, would you go up Rocky Lane and out that way, or down Forest Street, or?
well, well, you could do Forest, so you could do Granite and then through Oreo, Hummingbird, then down Rocky.
Well, I'm sure they'll figure it out. They managed to figure out all these things.
Before, yeah, they've done it before.
The one thing he did want to let you know was that he's concerned whether he's going to be able to do the stone seal this fall, because it should be done when the temperature's rising.
Oh, yeah.
And the temperature, he doesn't want to do it at the same time. The police chief is concerned about this. He doesn't want them doing that work at the same time they're doing the paving on
Right.
27.
Yeah,
And if by the time he gets that done, the nighttime temperatures may be a problem, so he's
Yeah,
not
right.
sure he's going to be able to get the stone seal done this fall.
oh, so,
Have to wait till the spring.
right, yeah.
So we have a motion to,
I have a motion, Mr. Chairman, to sign the agreement with DNR General Contracting for the pavement at the new Medfield Town Garage.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Under licenses and permits, the Wildwood Road neighbors request permission to hold a block party on August 31 from 3 to 7:30, rain date September 1.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Emerson Road neighbors request permission to hold a block party September 20, 4 to 8. Rain date September 21.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Guess summer's coming to an end, the block parties are starting.
Yep, that's right.
Well, that's Medfield Day, I think. Smart thing for a neighborhood to do, to have their block party on Medfield Day. Pending, new street sign at Fox Lane.
I believe you people, a
Is
couple
it?
of you wanted to go up and take a look at the sign for yourself, and that's why we left it pending.
Yeah, and that was because of me, and I just didn't get there, so.
Okay, we'll just hold it on there then.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at that. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll give you an incentive to go out jogging.
Haven't been able to jog for several months now.
Right? And
I'm doing physical therapy instead. Medfield State Hospital status update. Discuss State Hospital land disposition agreement. And we did get a draft land disposition agreement on the well fields.
I just have an interesting comment. I was gone last week. I was on vacation, and prior to that vacation, I had compiled the water tower comments for the LDA, the MOU, and the concern we have regarding the easements on the state hospital campus. I forwarded those to DCAM with the understanding that their council would review them while I was gone, and we would pick up the discussion when I got back. I was shocked to find over 100 emails going back and forth that discussion started while I was gone. It was my understanding DCAM was going to hold that discussion until I could come back and be part of that. So I am just returning today, and I am just now getting caught up on all of that correspondence that went on last week. So I know Bill's got some strong comments on it. I did talk with Peg this afternoon about what our approach will be with DCAM, but I am a little disappointed that DCAM kicked off those comments.
Who's
while I was gone.
DCAM communicating with about it?
I don't think he can't communicate.
Yeah, there were some communications from
Oh, I-
DCAM
well,
that
I
started,
haven't seen
yeah.
those, obviously, right? I have something else to complain about.
I'll complain for you for once.
Can I talk about
Sure,
that?
sure. Chris, can you tell us who DCAM is communicating with? Who they're negotiating with, or purportedly negotiating?
There were comments sent to Mike, to different, to Peg, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there were,
All over.
yeah.
So further to that topic, I wanted to provide a brief summary of where we were as of the last week before whatever happened that I haven't seen regarding the purchase and transfer of the two properties at the state hospital. We're talking about the well field and the water tower, and we're talking about the purchase of parcels A and B, the core campus and the sledding hill and additional land across the street. And I think my concern is that the draft DCAM comments appear to be trying to change the legislation that was enacted, and I have some serious issues about that. So what I'm hoping is, when I get through this, and I'll try to go as quickly as I can, is that we'll at least get the Board of Selectmen to, if not necessarily approve, at least endorse our pushback on those items that DCAM's trying to change. So I'm going to start on page 1 of the handout that I gave you. It's the simplest of the items. This is the well field legislation, and it's got what I think is, if I understood correctly, probably the most critical issue. So I'm not going to go through every item here, but the well field and the water tower came about as a result of negotiations and settlement agreement that was on last July 2013, last year, and it went through the town meeting, went through approvals. If you'd like, for your records, there's a history of the dates and when things were accomplished, and I would just point out that it took roughly 9 months from the time the legislation was filed before we got the first draft of the proposed land disposition agreement. And so I'll go through quickly. The legislation summary basically was to transfer at no cost or nominal cost the water tower, the surrounding land, the new access and easement on the other side of the cottages along the border of parcel A1. And the intent of that was essentially to keep the core campus unencumbered by any easements. The color blue that you see here essentially is the items that I think were the most important to the town and to the people who did the original negotiations. And when you get further on down, you'll see the red, which is where I think there's a conflict with what the key issue to the town was. So the key issue was that the transfer at no cost or nominal consideration, the wellfield and 5 of the 6 existing easements and rights-of-way running from the wellfield to the water tower. That was of prime concern to the town. The legislation also reserved to the Commonwealth the one right-of-way on Harding Street. We had some issues about why they actually needed that, but we made a decision that it didn't really matter, and rather than to quibble with it and everything else, we just let it go through. So it also calls out the Medfield Water and Sewer Board Concept Plan dated July 18th, which defined the approximate locations and the exact boundaries of both the wellfield and the easements and the water tower land were to be defined by a survey at a later date prior to conveyance of the parcels. And then finally, the title of the parchments of the parcels, the title would revert to the Commonwealth if Medfield ceased to use it for purposes of the public water supply. And there's nothing really controversial in there. We had no problems with any of that. The land disposition agreement, which came in on the 8th of July, had the nominal cost at $1, and I'm sure nobody had any problems with that. But when we talked about the easements, there's a statement in there that says, any easement or right-of-way DCAM sees fit to retain or grant for access, egress, utilities, and drainage across the property. So basically, it reserves back, in contradiction to the legislation, any easements that DCAM should decide to keep. And of course, my position is that this is in direct conflict with the legislation and we should not accept that. So now, what is the urgency of this land disposition agreement and getting it settled? And what am I recommending, urging the selectmen to support, if you will? I'm told that town title is required for the bonding of the water tower construction. And if I understood Mike's comments at the last selectmen's meeting and the meeting before, the bonding people are looking for the town to have title, or at least to be closer to having title to that property before they approve the bonds.
Yeah, the treasurer collector advised me that September 24th was the date scheduled for the bond sale.
So of all of the issues that we have right now with the water tower, that's, I think, the primary one is to get it bonded in time.
Right. I do have a secondary issue, I'm sorry, in that we've been informed by DCAM that our Hospital Road contractor cannot work within the easement up to the water tower until we take title of the property. So we are now going to incur costs for a delay in the Hospital Road water main project.
So we need to get it going, I guess. And so, my recommendation is to delete that offending paragraph from the land disposition agreement. And in addition, as further support, it not only conflicts with the legislation, but it also conflicts with within the LDA itself. Exhibit F calls out a form of release for deed and grant of easements, and also sets a priority that in event of any conflict between the legislation and the LDA, the legislation takes precedence. So we should have no pushback from DCAM on trying to get rid of that. But I think we need to move fairly fast.
I would suggest that we ask them to see the deed that they propose and see whether they put any easements in the deed. And if they don't put any easements in the deed they're going to give us, then they won't retain any.
Right.
So I guess that would be my preferred method, to see what they're going to offer us for.
Well, I guess my point is, why do we need them to offer us anything? I mean, the legislation, unless, can they override the legislation by a purchase and sale agreement?
Well, we need a deed to record at the registry. We need to get it.
Well, I guess my point is, you don't give us a deed that's got that easement in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Flat out, I mean, so let Christine go forward and finish the negotiations and say, essentially, get this out of here, and we have no problems with the rest of the agreement.
Yeah, show us what the deed's going to look like, and don't put any easements in the deed.
But what if it's in the deed?
Well, then we've got an issue, then we need to
And we have
find out
a,
why.
Well, there's no easement there now, let's put it that way. The only easements that are there now are the 5 that they've already granted us in the legislation, and the one that we're saying, fine, you want this one, keep it. There's only 6 easements. And the new easement that they're creating for access to the, which creates,
Which is where we want to do work.
yeah, so we obviously need to get this going as quickly as we possibly can.
Could I ask for clarification? My understanding was Steve Nolan was in charge of the negotiating.
we have a committee, don't we?
Yeah, they had a negotiating committee, and Steve is chairman of that, correct?
Who else? We had yourself,
I think Pete was on it, wasn't he?
John, Pete.
Yeah.
Ken Richards.
Ken
Right.
Richards.
Are the 5
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, and I think Steve's away until, for about another 10 days or something, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's away for about 10 days.
Well, how is that going to work with this September 24th deadline?
Do we have a survey yet? When is that
Yeah, we
gonna,
already have the survey.
Yes, we have the survey.
Survey was done.
Yeah.
and so that, then from the survey, you can drop
Are
the
there-
deed very quickly.
Are there any easements included in the survey?
Yes, but we
Yeah,
didn't have an
everything.
issue with any of the easements.
We
for
have no
water
issues
tower.
with it. The only issue we have is that,
Any easements to DCAM?
yeah, one.
Yeah, one.
One.
The right of way to Harding
Harding
Street,
Street.
on the Wellfield piece of it.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk about the
If
other
they only
ones.
understood it, they wouldn't care about it. but-
Yeah, we didn't argue about it because it really doesn't do anything for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So this sentence that you have in red, that you don't think that's going to be an issue?
We've
No, the
already
sentence
given them
sentence in red is the issue. It shouldn't be an issue getting it removed.
Right, we've given them comments to remove it.
Right.
And what was their reaction?
I have not gone through all of my comments yet as to what the final decision was. I don't have a
Other
draft back
emails.
from them yet.
Why don't we let Christine kind of wrap her hands around it?
I assume this red line here refers to up until the time that the property is transferred.
No.
It's
No.
not a
No,
continuing.
no,
that was
It's
the
a
no.
continuing
This essentially,
future.
this essentially throws out the paragraph in the legislation that gives us the easements.
It seems to me that that ought to be restricted until, once you make the deal and transfer the land, that ought to be it, whatever they need.
That is it.
For
Once
them.
they deed it to you, that's it.
Yeah,
And so if they don't retain the easements in the deed, then they don't get them.
you're
And so
right.
I think that they've just included this to keep their
Options
hands,
open
their
in
options open, to
perpetuity,
keep
yeah.
everything available to them. But I think that when they get around to drafting the deed, they won't put an easement in there, I don't think.
But doesn't the legislation override all this anyhow? And it was voted by House, Senate, signed by the governor, correct? So wouldn't that override?
That's certainly very clear indication of what they should be doing.
As it says within the LDA as well, that any conflict between the two, the legislation and the LDA, that the legislation will take precedence.
So this
And I can give you the reference. It's,
should be cut and dry then.
Yeah, I just don't think you can take the legislation down to the registry and record it. and
well,
get
it's part of the
title from that.
LDA, by the way,
that
just so you
need
know.
that deed from them.
Yes, but it is attached to the LDA, the legislation, just so you know.
Now, who actually does that? Who actually draws the deed up and goes? Is
Well,
that-
I think probably they're going to draw it up at DCAM, and then they'll give it to us, and
For
we're
us to
obligated to
review.
record it.
Are they aware of the September 24th deadline we have to? Okay.
That's what you call a bargaining chip. But not for us.
Well, so you don't see this as an issue then?
I do, if it's gives them a right in perpetuity to get an easement after they have transferred the property.
Right,
to them.
exactly, so we got.
I don't see it as an issue if it ends once the property is
Right,
transferred.
and in all fairness to DCAM, I have not gotten an actual copy of their response to the comments that we sent them.
Right, and as you say, I made my comments here as of the end of last
Right.
week.
Yeah, we
so-
made those comments,
Right.
and I sent them all. I know there were discussions while I was gone, but I have not actually seen
Right.
either an electronic or printed copy of their response to my comments.
Yeah, but I do think it's important that the Board of Selectmen understand where our issues are and what the, what-
Yeah,
Yeah, well, no, we understand that, but I think what we do, we have to let Christine catch her breath and coordinate with one point person what's going on. and see where we stand, have her a chance to kind of review their response.
And actually, you know, there is Exhibit F to the LDA that they gave us for the water tower and the well fields is in fact the draft deed. And it doesn't really have any easements except the ones that give us the right to lay out the,
Another conflict,
connections.
another conflict between the two paragraphs within the LDA. And in my contractual experience, if I recognized that there were two conflicts within the land disposition agreement, I wouldn't let them stay if I had a chance to clarify and get them out. So I agree with Exhibit F, and you'll see my comment here. It says that it conflicts with both the legislation and its own Exhibit F. That sentence. So I suppose we could always have a battle of the forms of some kind somewhere down the road, but I just as soon see it get out of there now.
Right. Well, like I said, I think Christine's got to catch up on what she's got for responses so we can see where they stand, because otherwise we're making some assumptions here. We don't know where the final status is.
The second page is the page on the parcels A and B and the easements that are associated with parcels A and B, and this one is a little more complicated and perhaps a little more sensitive. Price negotiations, the history, price negotiations began by the Board of Selectmen's appointed negotiation team on the 22nd of August, 2013, was completed on 11/7/13 and accepted by the Selectmen. And it took us 8 months to get pieces of the proposed LDA. We don't have the LDA yet. And so basically, let's talk about the documents that relate to that. The purchase price summary that was signed on 11/7 defines the property as parcels A and B as identified on the Judith Nitch 2005 subdivision plan. This is when it calls out all of the parcels and shows the locations of all of the parcels. And it included all of the easements. I have this in blue because it was a point that was important to the town, including all of the easements, licenses, permits, agreements, rights-of-way, and appurtenances to the land and improvements. So the purchase and sale agreement that we signed included the price, included the terms of how we would share proceeds on a resale, included the incentives in great detail as to what, added incentives we had, and defined the purchase closing as no later than 2014, but also said that we were agreeing to buy all of the rights and rights of way and easements. All right. Now, what did the legislation come up with? The legislation defines properties as parcels A and B, also as identified on the June 2005 compiled subdivision plan. Then goes on to say that the commissioner may retain, acquire, through various means, including eminent domain, rights of way or easements over any portion of the hospital property that the commissioner deems necessary for continued access and egress and use of any parcel, including parcels A1 and A2, and then again, in conformance with what we were looking for, provided, however, that any such retention acquisition on parcels A and B is subject to the approval of the town of Medfield. And
so anything on our land that we're getting has to be approved by us.
yes.
Well, what does town of Medfield mean? Is that the selectmen or is that a vote of town meeting?
Well, I was assuming it was the selectmen, and
The intent was the select.
in the next paragraph in the disposition agreement, when they say town of Medfield, they say through its selectmen in the next paragraph. So I just think it's just sloppiness in the way probably that they wrote it. But the key is that we were in agreement. Under the purchase summary, we thought we were buying all of the easements on the core campus. And the legislation gives us, again, a point that wasn't worth disputing or whatever, because it gave us the opportunity to look at any easements that the DCAM would say that they needed across the core campus, and then to approve or reject those agreements.
Okay, can I just summarize that to make sure it's clear? The commissioner may have an easement. However, before that became official, the town of Medfield via the selectmen would have to agree to that.
That's what the legislation says.
Okay. So if the town of Medfield did not agree to an easement that the commissioner wanted, then that would be null and void.
That gets into the issue here.
That's
which
what
is-
we have told DCAM. Some disagreement.
We're getting into what I think you know, as Pete said, we're getting into part of what the issue is now. You know, one of the things here is the levels of the organizations that we're dealing with. I mean, if I had unlimited authority here or whatever, I'd be on the phone to the commissioner right now and I'd be saying, do you want an easement? Do you need an easement? Why?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Yeah.
Instead, we're working through the levels of management or whatever. We're working through the legal staff. We're working through whatever. So I'm not even sure where some of these things have come from. All right. So all I can do is identify them and point out what the issues are.
Again, I think it's just an abundance of caution on their bureaucracy, and that when we see the actual documents, I don't think there'll be things in it that'll bother us, except that crosshatch easement that runs on the roadway.
Which
That bothers me.
I will get to. Now, I just wanted to point out that the other two pieces of legislation for Westboro and the one for Waltham, for the Fernald School, they, a week after ours was signed, both of them were signed within that following week. Mm-hmm. And just for the heck of it, I looked at what were the easements that were called out on those pieces of legislation. And the one for Westboro is different from ours. Number one, of course, they don't have a parcel A1, they don't have a parcel A2 that specifically calls out the need for, save those for conservation and recreation and agricultural purposes. There is no parcel A1 or A2 in Westboro. But what Westboro does call out is that DCAM will retain the right of access across any of the parcels of property because DCAM is still using buildings on Westboro. Now that's logical and that makes sense, all right? The paragraph of Section 7 for Fernald School is exactly as ours, except it does not mention parcel A1 or parcel A2 because they don't have a parcel A1 and A2. I would imagine they're probably buying the whole property, but it does have that across any portion, but the town of Waltham will have the right to approve or reject any easement across the property. All right. So they're somewhat similar, at least the Fernald School and ours. And again, those are acceptable. That's an acceptable clause, the way it's written there.
Yeah.
All right. And the price amount is not identified in the legislation, and I would not expect it to be, and it was not identified in any of the other legislations either. But it is defined in the purchase agreement, right? So similarly, as in the purchase agreement, it is defined as a portion of the DCAM sunk costs agreed to by the commissioner and the town, which may be paid over 10 years. So the term of the loan, the method is spelled out within the legislation. Specific incentives are not identified other than it says the commissioner could reduce DCAM's share to as little as 30%. And different from the purchase price summary, where we had were required to close by December 2014. The existing legislation calls for it to close by December 31st, 2015. And my recollection of the other two pieces of legislation for Westboro and for Waltham, one is, I'm not sure, mixed up which is which, but these are long. This December 31st is a longer closing period of 2015. Theirs are more in the middle of 2015. All right, so what's the problem with the land disposition agreement? All right, number one, we don't have it. And all we have are documents that would appear to be exhibits in the land disposition agreement. And we do have some issues with those exhibits.
Can I just interrupt for a
Yes.
second? I'm sorry. Why don't we have it? Is it because it just passed and it takes them a while to get it together? Or?
Well,
They're hoping to get the water tower and the well field settled before we start the negotiations and the discussion of the LDA for the main campus.
yeah,
Which
but-
would be very helpful to us.
Yes,
also.
and that's where our focus has been.
Right.
I think they actually may have wanted to hold any discussion on the LDA, but they sent the survey and asked for our impression on the survey, and that's where we had this.
See, the
concern.
problem is that we've gotten a piecemeal parts of what the LDA may or may not include, with the understanding that we should review these and get them back, relatively quickly. And then the concern is we're reviewing pieces of an LDA that we haven't seen without even knowing how those pieces are incorporated in the LDA.
And, Mary Beth Clancy and I have a great relationship, and I'm sure that once I touch base with her tomorrow, I can figure out, what the discussions were while I was gone, where we are, what their comments are to our comments so far, and how we're gonna move forward as quick as possible. while making us very happy.
Good.
All right. So the biggest issues, though, with that pieces that we've seen of the presumed forthcoming LDA is that the compiled subdivision plan that calls out the parcels is revised to replace the one that's in the legislation. So what we've got is a compiled plan dated either July or August of 2014, where the legislation calls out a plan 2005. The other issue is that it unilaterally establishes DCAM's easements on parcel A. Basically, the drawing of the revised parcel plan shows easements crosshatched on parcel A.
And those easements are basically all of the roadways.
They are, well, it's basically a box around the inside of the core campus, essentially.
Forms a big U.
Yeah.
Coming in from the entrance where the guard shack is, up and around, and ends up by the,
Well, how can they draw that in when that hasn't been approved by the town of Medfield?
I'm hoping to find the answer to that
Oh,
tomorrow.
But
Yes, we do too.
I mean, there were discussions that, you know, the town itself wanted to remain access between A1 and A2. But the discussions were the town would put in those easements and they'd be more trail-like easements. They clearly wouldn't be paved roadways. There appears to be, you know, lost in the translation on this easement issue, and that's hoping what I can rectify tomorrow.
Right.
yeah. I was thinking that maybe they were looking to get access to the C&D area for the cleanup.
Well, see, but
But that is something that we could work out differently.
John
Yeah.
Thompson can talk to that, but John, correct me if I misspeak, please. We discussed this during our mediation process on the for the restoration of the C&D area, and one of the discussions that came up was how does the public get access to the parking lot at the top of the restored area? And in our discussions there, it was you have all of parcel A2 as it bounds the core campus, and most of it is open field. There, what more could you ask? There's your access to that area. And the power plant road has been cleared. I mean, it wouldn't be the first choice, I think, to open up because it comes down at the incredibly sensitive river area at the bottom of the restored hill and everything else. It would be, I think, advantageous to funnel visitors to the top of the hill as opposed to down at the bottom of the hill along by the river. But the access is there.
And they have started clearing that area this past week, and it is dramatic the way it has opened up the river, and it is going to be spectacular.
If you let me go to the last page, Pete, I'll just quickly summarize. As I did on the first thing, I tried to talk about what I thought were the urgent. I think it's still urgent to get the draft LDA. Otherwise, we're going to be faced, or we run the risk of being faced, as we are now with the water tower, with something that needs to be done in 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever and resolved. Let's surface any other issues in the LDA as quickly as we can. And I'm sure they got to have a form somewhere. I understand it's a draft, you know, nobody needs to get upset about what it is, everything else, but let's get it in here. We've been asking for proposed terms and conditions of sale since December of 2013, and we still have nada. All right, so my first urgency, and I just pretty much I tried to prioritize this, but you know I think we need to draft LDA ASAP to ensure that we're going to make the closure by December 2014. I think we need to remove the.
You mean 2014 or 2015?
No, 2014. I think it's to our advantage. We've had several discussions about this before. We presumably, by December 2014, will still have a good relationship with DCAM. It would be nice to finalize, you know, the transfers, at least with the current administration, if we can.
Okay.
All right, so that ought to be, I think, our internal goal, is to get it done by then.
Because you're saying if a new administration comes in, might have a very different philosophy, and all of
Don't
a
know.
sudden we could be having problems.
Don't know, and you know, we know who we're dealing with now.
And we know there'll be uncertainty with new people.
Yes. If we've got this kind of uncertainty with the people we've been dealing with and we have a generally good relationship, what will we have with new people?
Yep.
I mean, I'm somewhat concerned.
Yep.
All right, the next item, I think, is we need to keep parcel A unencumbered by any easements to avoid a negative impact on the sale and reuse you know, we've worked very hard to try to keep the core campus unencumbered. And I'll get down to a further comment a little bit lower down. So anyway, the recommendation, I mean, it seems to me that we should be retaining the compiled subdivision plan that's in the land, in the legislation, as opposed to putting the new one in. It seems to me we should incorporate the new subdivision plan in the LDA only to define properly the survey lines and the boundaries. We need to incorporate a legislative easement language that's in the LDA that mirrors the language that's in the legislation. Essentially, that preserves the town's rights to approve or reject any new parcel A easement that the commissioner may wish to. I mean, obviously, I'd rather get down in our negotiations to have the commissioner say she doesn't want any, in which case this problem goes away. But we're not there, not yet, anyway. And then so as I said in the next statement, when I just kind of said it in other words, is determine if there is a specific no easement that they want. And then I would ask the question as to why this has to be a DCAM easement and why it couldn't be granted by the town. And I think that should be the town's position, is that we would grant any easements.
Wouldn't between the two parcels, wouldn't they always have the option of Hospital Road?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of in a way, it's a no-brainer. One of the things, well, let me finish up. The last bullet, I think, sums it up fairly well. It says that any decision on the and I would put this down, way down at the bottom of the list of priorities here, is that any decision on town approval of any specific easement that the commissioner wishes, it's not urgent, and it could be delayed until the reuse and redevelopment alternatives are better defined. And this would be an issue of why would we limit ourselves to where an easement could go now, or force ourselves to take an easement now that would be given to DCAM in perpetuity, when the town, when it sees what the development is, can make an intelligent decision as to where the easement should go, and the town could grant that easement. So, I mean, that's basically a summation of, of where we are. And I'd be very interested in seeing what, if we've gotten any response to any of this. I wish we could just basically call the commissioner and say, do you know your guys are changing the legislation? Why are they changing it, and why are you asking for these things? And then, oh, by the way, do you really want an easement, and why do you want it? So, if things fall apart in the discussions that Christine is having, whatever, then maybe we could ask our legislators to talk to the commissioner and say, are you aware that this is going on, in a nice way? I mean, I'm not looking to do that, because she doesn't need anybody knocking on her door.
Let's try my approach tomorrow
So,
first.
yeah.
And then we'll go there.
Well, couldn't, if, let's say the commissioner comes up with a reason she wants an easement, couldn't the town then make the easement rather than have DCAM do it?
I would agree. And that would be my position, and that would be my recommendation.
do it.
There is no conceivable reason that I can think of for DCAM to need an easement, on the parcel A.
No, and I think that going back to the discussions we had, about last fall, was that we have no problem with providing an easement between the two, but the town will decide if, when, and where.
I have talked to Bill about this. I think there should be an easement at some point. And if we can agree upon it mutually, I think that's the best way to do it, because I think DCAM, we have worked well with DCAM. We don't want to create an adversarial relationship. I think it's been a cooperative relationship. My impression is similar to what you said earlier, that the reason for the easement was something suggested by the Hunt Club and the other, Charles River Watershed Association, to maintain a trail system or the opportunity for connections between parcels of open space.
The easement that they've drawn doesn't do that connection.
I agree.
Yeah,
The
that's-
easement that is proposed is very nonsensical. But I think there should be some sort of an easement that allows it, because if you don't have that, DCAM or the state may decide at some point, well, that parcel to the right of the hospital is of no use for us in terms of open space. We will put it to some other use.
Yeah, if
And
that's the
even though
case,
it's kept
can't
in
the town can do that? The town certainly is going to want to work with the Hunt Club.
With the club, sure.
Well, yes, but I think, we've talked about this long enough. I don't see why there isn't a reason we can't sit down. We have a good working relationship with
Just find out
DCAM.
now.
And
Yeah.
figure out where our trailers may go. And, if you want to reserve the right to move it at a later date, depending upon, on the use of it.
Yeah.
But, to start arguing with them at this point, when we've worked together cooperatively, I think is,
Well,
I don't,
John Thompson. My suggestion would be that if if we don't get a sense that Christine is making progress with DCAM, I'm certain that we could arrange to have the commissioner come out to Medfield and talk to us again. We will probably need her in attendance at another meeting. In fact, John O'Donnell, who's working on the cleanup, which I'd like to give you a short update to in a few minutes, has suggested that we have a meeting out here as an update to where they are right now with the cleanup. So I'm sure if we asked the commissioner to come out and talk to us and advise her that this would be on our agenda, that she would talk to us about it. But I think we should let Christine catch up and see where they're at right now, because commissioner's very busy. This may not, and probably likely is not on her radar.
I would make one comment, and that is, any easement that goes to the state will stay with the state forever. And we've seen that with the easements that came across the,
unless you put some provision in there that it can be amended at the request of the town.
so again, I would urge that in the back of our minds, we at least see the benefit of agreeing with DCAM as to where that easement might be, or finding some mutually agreeable place where that easement might be, but that it be under the control of the town and not under
I would
DCAM's
suggest
control.
there are other goals the town has there that are also very important. One of them is going ahead with the water tower construction, and anything that would impede the transfer of that land is a distinct disadvantage. The other thing, we're negotiating some provisions in terms of the cleanup with the
That's,
location of the soil. Yes, it is related.
No, it's not.
We're dealing with the same agency, we're dealing with the same people, and I think you have to be fair. It's not all one side, it's a negotiation.
Can I make a comment? I'm Gil Rogers, and this idea of requiring some trail or some access to get from A1 to A2, if you look behind the hospital, in other words, if you look at behind the R building, if you know the building designations, there's a large space of open space, which is part technically of A. And you could easily have a trail or an access from one side to the other through that space without disturbing the central campus at all.
And
Gil,
that's
I'm
where
not-
I would envision it being located. That's where it makes sense, somewhere along the Dover line up there.
Yeah. And also, I think that what you want to do, thinking about what the reuse of the core campus is, you don't want to have something that's going to distort or encumber the plan for that. So that some arbitrary easement, whatever it is, would just be a big mistake. And if the issue is the horse trail systems or walking trails or hiking trails, I think there's lots of ways that you can accommodate that without having some explicit easement through the central campus. Agreed.
Agreed.
Yep. And hopefully, when we see what they're actually proposing, we'll find out that they're not proposing that.
But I'm just scared sometimes when you put it in the hands of the state. I'd rather have Medfield have its own control of the easement rather than put it into the hands of the state. You never know what's going to happen with the state.
Yeah.
No one is more critical of the state than I've been over the years, and I think sometimes you have to work cooperatively.
Yeah. Like I said,
Well, maybe
I
they
think
don't
they've
object.
And I think they've shown good faith with us. I think sometimes we need to show good faith with
Right.
them.
and I think we have to give Christine a chance, like I said, we talked about, to kind of catch up on things rather than getting ahead of ourselves here. and
Maybe there
making
won't be an
assumptions about
objection.
things.
Right.
Exactly. So I think let Christine.
Welcome
handle
back
it
from
first.
vacation.
Anything else? Any other
Anything else on the state
comments,
hospital?
questions?
John?
Oh, yes, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Christine, can I ask a question about the water main work? Could we get a license for the water main work?
That's what our approach will have to be.
I think in parallel, in case the land disposition agreement for the water tower doesn't get done in time, regardless of how it might hurt the bond issue, at the very least, if you get a license, you should be able to expedite a license through DCAM to get that done.
Yeah.
And then John, I think, is going to talk about the soil as well.
But before, I just want to thank you, Bill. I think this summarizes what the town needs to do, and I appreciate the work you've done on that.
John Thompson, I thought with Shurkin, I thought I'd give you a quick update as far as the cleanup goes. And, Bill and I and John talk pretty much daily about the different things happening and the moving parts, so you can rest assured that, we are watching what's happening up there every day. And we do have an open line of communication with DCAM as well. I talk to DCAM about every other day in terms of what's happening at the hospital and their plans. And so in my conversations with John O'Donnell from DCAM, we talked a little bit over the last couple of days about the current water main work that's going on Hospital Road and the scheduling for that, and how that might interact with the schedule for cleaning up the site. And so his understanding as of July 28th was that the town would be done to the CSX easement by August 22nd, which is Friday of this week. And he's wondering if that is still an accurate and estimate of when they would get to the CSX easement. And then and the CSX easement is the train line, the rail line that crosses Hospital Road. And the question is that they need to go underneath that rail line. It's called pipe jacking. It requires some horizontal work. And the construction schedule, Pete, you mentioned that they've done clearing. That's called grubbing a site. The site has been now grubbed. It's a spectacular open area, but I would caution people not to go up to the hospital to look, at least until further notice, because there's a lot of trucks gearing up to be there. A lot of yellow iron will be up there, and a lot of activity around the excavation of the C&D area. This Friday, they will set up what's called the air monitoring stations, and with that set up, they will begin what's called stump removal. So now that all the trees have been removed in the work area, they go in there and they pull the stumps out of the ground, and those stumps are set for removal starting on Friday. So once the stumps are removed, they're pretty much free to start the actual excavation work next week.
John, on the air monitor, what's the
Yeah.
concern that there might be for the air monitor?
What they're monitoring for is asbestos in air. They're required to as part of their permitting process. And because there were lots of different shingles and tiles and things that were put in the C&D area that may contain asbestos, they're required by the state to set up these air monitoring stations, which basically breathe the air through a filter, and then they inspect that every day to make sure that the soil is properly wetted as they excavate. So this is the beginning of the actual excavation work, and it will probably start next week. So that getting back to the work with the water main work is that the idea is that as the trucks are loaded, the trucks will be loaded at the site, and they'll proceed out the old cart road that goes out across from the sledding hill. They'll make a right-hand turn onto Hospital Road, and that will give them access to Route 27 and then 109. And so we don't want to have a delay once that process is started with the work going on at the CSX rail site. And so we're trying to understand both schedules, and it will help us to report back to John O'Donnell when and if there might be any delay or any days that they are going to need to isolate that area while they go underneath the railroad tracks.
Do we know, Mike, if if they're on schedule?
I know they're moving along pretty well, but I think it depends on when CSX crew comes in. Water and Sewer's meeting tomorrow night, and I can call Paul Millett in the
Well,
morning and find out.
I talked to John's office today and asked him to give me a day to find out, because Paul Millett will be here from Environmental Partners to do the bid opening for the water tower. So then I can sit down with him and actually talk about what the change is to the construction.
Okay, that'd be great.
Hopefully after noon tomorrow, we'll have an answer on that.
Okay.
From observation, they are in front of the Clark Building now with the laying of the pipe in the ground.
Yes.
And I would think it would take them a while to get down to CSX, but I don't know how far they go per day, but given the fact that they're only at the Clark
And
Building, I
that-
wouldn't think they'd get to the
With water, you
CSX
don't
by Friday.
necessarily have to go all the way, you know, it doesn't have to be continuous. If the CSX crew is scheduled to come in, they could, because what they're doing, my understanding is they're putting a sleeve under the railroad track.
Yes.
And then they put the pipe through the sleeve.
Yeah.
So that could be a separate operation from
operation,
the
And
actual.
in most of that area, from the Clark Building on down, they're really on the edge of the road, so it shouldn't interfere with the truck traffic from the C&D area.
Well, I think the way,
Except at the end, they do
correct.
cross.
That's correct, Pete.
Yeah, that's the
Yes,
issue.
that's the issue.
Environmental Partners, who's managing that construction project, has been great working with John on that,
Mhm.
so I'm sure we can have an answer for that tomorrow.
Okay, and
Contractor's been
Yeah.
very good. He's,
Yeah.
they're very happy with him.
his understanding also was that the contractor was doing work between Hospital Road to Long Meadow, a 2,550-foot water main inside an easement, but I think you mentioned at this meeting, Christine, that that's now on hold?
I was told by DCAM that that work could not take place unless that land was transferred to us.
Okay,
So I'm hoping we can try and work something out tomorrow on that as well.
okay.
I'm
Other-
spending a lot of time on the phone tomorrow, apparently.
You're good. Welcome back.
Would you add also the exploring in parallel in case the LDA doesn't get signed in time, a license for
Yes.
EPI to take out the
Yes.
soil around the water
It's
tower?
going to be whatever is necessary to get this done.
Okay. A few other notes I had was that from this point on, every Tuesday at 10 a.m., there's an on-site meeting, which they pass out what's called a 2-week look-ahead, and that Andrea Stiller is invited to go to that meeting on-site. So she'll be available at this meeting to hear what the construction schedule is and anything that impacts that schedule. And I think we should have Andrea go to those meetings. She doesn't need to stay there all day, but she could listen in and get this 2-week look ahead and report back to you, Christine.
Yes, I think actually the
how
plan is
that's
for
working.
for Andrea and myself to both attend those meetings.
Okay. Another note is DCAM is going to remove 6 telephone poles at the former laundry building area as part of the contract for the cleanup. There are 6 old phone poles that are unsightly. They used to carry an electric line, I think, onto the property. It's on the land that Medfield is going to take, but they did include in their contract to remove the 6 poles. 3 of them are already gone, and you'll see the other 3 go away, which will help that view shed at the top of the hill. I really think that will help a lot. Those we wouldn't need those in the future, nor would a developer. In
Would you
September,
call it a view shed?
yeah, view shed. That's what they.
I don't know that word.
And
That's
when you stand there, you really do get a
excellent.
sense of a view
It's a
shed.
dramatic view.
It's a beautiful
Shed.
view. In September, he's going to meet with Gene Minio on some work at the pump house, which is down adjacent to the Charles River. Bill and I and Gene have talked about using some of the pumps inside the old pump house, the big iron pumps, for artistic purposes in the future. And so he's going to meet with Gene. He doesn't need a license with her because it's in a non-disposition parcel, so they can go meet and talk about it. So that's sort of an aside, but it's something he's aware of and is working on. And the last thing he wanted, well, last 2 things we need to work out is he questioned whether or not the schedule for the structural engineers to go through the 4 buildings that we have contracted to go in and do the structural look, whether that was still on track and when that might happen. He didn't know if, for the same reason that we canceled my walk with the members of the redevelopment committee, that work might also be delayed. He was questioning that.
Actually, I just got the license agreement today for them, and
Okay.
they're hoping to mobilize and get in there the 2nd or 3rd week of September.
Okay,
But that shouldn't have any impact because they're under a separate license.
fine. And Steve Nolan is spearheading the rescheduling of our walkthrough. We've already picked the buildings that we'll go through, and so it's just a matter of finding a weekday that we can do that. That's it. What's that?
Want to mention the river?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Bill. On last Friday, town representatives and representatives for DCAM and their consultants went on a barge into the river to confirm that the cleanup area for the oil release from 1978 hasn't changed. And the result of that review was that the oil residual is still in the same location, so they don't have to modify their work plans. And that was very successful. So the plan right now is to attack the C&D area, get that work underway next week. And following the completion of that work, then they will put sheet piling in the river, remove this sediment, and do the replication work in both the C&D area and along the bank of the river.
So when do you think they'll actually be able to start that?
I think it'll take most of September will be excavating the C&D area. I would say they'd be in the river probably in early October right now. Yep. Yeah, sure, Gil.
A question that I think a lot of people in the community have, particularly those that are environmentally conscious, is what's happening to the material that's being trucked away? How is that being disposed?
Yeah, any material that's trucked away has been deemed to be asbestos containing or not suitable for reuse on site. And an example of that would be the stumps. Because if you bury large stumps in the ground, they tend to decompose and they cause sinkholes and that sort of thing. So right now, Massachusetts doesn't have an asbestos landfill, and so that material has to be trucked out of state. I believe it's going to Ohio to a special secure landfill that's designed for the containment of asbestos-containing material. It's called special waste at this point, but it does go off-site and it does not stay in the state.
But do we know if it's being disposed of in an environmentally sound way, even if it's being trucked to Ohio?
Yes, there's very strict rules from what they call cradle to grave for asbestos-containing material. Everything from the putting the material on the truck, make sure that it's wetted, it has to be in a liner, it has to be zipped up, and the truck drivers have to keep what's called a chain of custody for the material from point A to point B. And then it has to go to a landfill that is approved by the EPA and the state of receipt. So there's only about 3 places that you can take asbestos-containing material, and one of them is Canada. So it's a lengthy and expensive process to manage, asbestos waste on this scale. We're talking about, more than 1,000 cubic yards.
When those trucks leave, who actually inspects that they make sure they...
They're on site. There's a licensed asbestos inspector, so they have people that are trained to inspect not only the waste material handling, but what they call the decontamination of the truck. So the truck is looked at before it leaves the site, and has to be fully inspected and make sure that it's damp and that it's nothing leaking from it, and that all of the bagging material that's used to contain it is sound. Very, very tight rules on that.
Richard, it's also my understanding that were the town to have a particular bylaw on asbestos, that DCAM's contracts with their construction people and removal people typically would allow the town to also inspect the trucks as they left. I'm not saying we should be doing this, I'm just saying that in terms of the controls as to, how strictly, you can watch this stuff. I mean, if we had so chosen to have that kind of a bylaw, whatever, we could be inspecting the trucks as they left as well. I'm not recommending that, by the way.
I will say there are towns in Massachusetts that do have asbestos bylaws, as Bill suggests, because a lot of people, there are houses, including in Medfield, that have asbestos shingles. And, those contractors need to have a license to remove that, and it needs to be observed. And there are plenty of state regulations that need to be followed in that situation. But if Medfield chose in the future, they could adopt a bylaw related to it.
DCAM did pay for a number of our employees and our consultants to do an asbestos training, particularly in the DPW. If there was an issue up there, we had to send some of the DPW up there. They are trained in asbestos now and would know what to look for and what the reaction was.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
The final thing that I guess I wanted to bring up about the hospital was just so that as a Board of Selectmen, that we have an agreement and an understanding as to how we're going to proceed from this point forward, in terms of who from the town is going to be dealing with the state. Chris is obviously in touch with a lot of people. Who do we want as a group to be negotiating with DCAM, I guess is the thing that I wanted to bring up. Is it the negotiation committee that we've already appointed? Or how are we seeing that's going to progress?
Well, I thought it was the negotiating committee working through Christine, so that we have just a very finite group, as opposed to all of us throwing our 2 cents in and things getting more confused than they possibly could be at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that, I personally think the negotiation committee is a fine place to have that authority rest as well.
So then you're saying it would be the current negotiating committee working with Christine?
That's it.
Yeah. I just thought that it'd be good to have
Yeah,
a common understanding as to how we're gonna go forward.
that's cool.
Yeah, I think there's two distinct phases. You've got the negotiating phase until the land is turned over to the town.
Right,
And then you enter a different phase, and
Sure.
you've appointed the
right.
advisory committee to handle that
From there
and
on,
preparation of
take
the
over.
master plan
Right.
and coming up with a reuse
Sure.
plan recommendation, so.
Yes, yep, and so that committee's gonna figure out what we're gonna do with it once we get it, but as we're finding out, there are a lot of little details before we get it.
Yes, yeah. No, I think Chris had talked about she would continue working on the negotiating phase of it, but that Sarah would work
Lead off.
with the
Planning.
committee.
Planning?
Yes, on the
Planning.
planning phase of it. So is that your interpretation, Chris?
that good?
I think that was the intent when we originally talked
Yeah,
about
you hand
hiring
it
the
off to
town
her.
planner, was to
Hand off to her.
That would be her.
work on the redevelopment.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And as far as the cleanup, John, you will continue to
Oh, absolutely, yes.
monitor that? Good, thank you.
We've got 2 years roughly through the end of the monitoring, through the end of the monitoring stage for the CBOC plumes and for lead plumes, we've got a 2-year monitoring. So
I just think the town is incredibly lucky to have someone with your knowledge and talent to be able to do that,
And willingness.
and willingness. Yeah, thank you.
Well worth it.
It's, I remember being at some of those meetings, it was like being at a convention of licensed site professionals. There were so many in the room. so-
Oh, yeah. And it was a couple summers ago that John came back from his summer vacation to attend a meeting for us. So the next item is Selectmen's reports. Mr. Sarga, why don't we start with you?
Yes, a couple of things. I've been hit with a number of emails. I actually forwarded these to Chief Meany, but we continue to get concerns on the traffic at South and Main, and I know some of it with the new Brothers Marketplace opening up, everyone was very excited and was getting there. But let me just read, I think this kind of summarizes some of the concerns I've heard. It says, despite the signs of the traffic signals, drivers continue to block the intersection in the center of town. At midday today, so not even peak rush hour, the Route 109 traffic was blocking the South Street intersection so that cars could not get out. I recall one of the reasons signs took so long to put up was because of cost. If the town is not enforcing the law requiring drivers to not block, then it's a waste of the town's money to even put them up. I'm not looking for the police to ticket anyone, just pull these drivers over and give them warnings. I know the chief is looking at traffic patterns and looking for solutions to the traffic issues. So that continues to be an issue with them blocking that intersection. I was there last week. There were 2 cars in front of me, and we waited through 2 sets of green lights, could not get out because the traffic was there. The 2 cars actually did U-turns in front of me and then bolted back down onto South Street. I'm just wondering, maybe we can put our heads together with the chief and see, is there a way, we can get maybe a walking officer in the downtown, or even a crossing guard that would be there like we have outside the high school area, or something just to monitor that. And this is the summer, when, after Labor Day, when everybody returns, that's going to manifest itself even more. So I'm getting I'm stopped by a lot of people concerned with that South Street and the blocking of traffic along
I
109.
think it's going to be an issue going forward, and I would assume that the chief will figure out an enforcement mechanism that will make it better. I think that some enforcement is going to be needed.
It is, and in addition to that, I talked to the chief recently, and he's trying to reconfigure his budget and come up with some money to redo the guts of the signals.
Sure.
You know, he said that the mechanisms in those traffic signals are very much outdated, and
Yeah.
they need to be state-of-the-art so that they can control them at different times of the day and better handle the flow of traffic. So that is one thing he's looking at, but I agree the enforcement is going to be a problem going forward, because I suppose people get frustrated sitting in traffic on 109, so that by the time they get to South Street, they're not going to let anybody go by.
I mean, there's clear that there's two, we have a sign up above, we have a sign in the bottom, and the people are just ignoring it.
Yeah.
I just happen to live very close to that intersection, and I've had a lot of observation there. What happens sometimes that I've observed is during a green light, all of the cars slide forward. So a car, 2 or 3 cars can be under the light when it's green, but have no ability to move forward. And then the light turns red, and the South Street light turns green, and the cars are stuck. So they get under there while it's green, but then it turns red because this light in the middle of town is blocking.
It's almost like they have to wait until the traffic is gone enough, so
They
then
do.
they do, but they're not.
I agree, Richard.
Well, that's one of the things too, I think, where the chief felt the traffic signals could communicate with each other better.
Yeah.
That, because part of the problem is the light turns red at North Street, and the traffic that has the green light at South Street backs up. And then the light changes and they're stuck. So I think that's one of the critical things about changing the signals. The other thing I think has changed things a bit too is we seem to be getting more train traffic. And I think when a train goes through, that just, all bets are off. It just messes up the center to it fairly well.
Well, we're also getting more pedestrian traffic, which I think is a good thing, because of Brothers and Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and others. So they're using the walk buttons, which is good, but those walk buttons are also slowing things up.
Yeah, and I think there is, I was talking to the chief about this, and I think sometimes some people will play with the signals and just run back and forth and push the signals just
Yeah,
to
the kids.
tie
Yeah,
up
you can have
traffic.
that.
I hope that's not happening.
I think it is.
That's not good. So hopefully we can maybe tie the chief in and let him know I'm sure he's well aware of it.
Yeah, I know he's working on it. Maybe we ought to have him come in at one of his September meetings and talk to you about what progress he's made on it.
Yeah, his thoughts
Because
and
by that
stuff.
point, we'll have
some
a pretty good
ideas.
idea of how bad it's going to be
People
when
will be
school
bad.
starts.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I attended a seminar at Stony Brook Reservation in Norfolk on solar energy, and one of the things they talked about was the solar challenge. And they said Needham actually had 100 residents that took part. I guess it's taking place in Franklin now, and what it is, if people commit to putting solar panels on their house, they'll be able to get a discount. And I don't know whether Medfield, that's something that there would be interest.
I know the Energy Committee has talked about that. You really need an individual who will step forward and lead it as sort of the captain of that effort. I know one individual indicated to me that they were interested in doing it, and I shipped their name along to Marie Zach Nolan at the Energy Committee, and I don't know if anything came of that. That was about a month or two ago.
And the other thing, I took a ride down to the Falmouth hockey rink down by the Cape, and I took some pictures here you can take a look at. And what they've done is in their parking lot,
Oh, yeah.
they have over the parking lot, all the
Yeah.
infrastructure to put the solar panels so that all the cars park underneath, plus the entire roof, that's a great shot there, plus the entire roof is covered in solar panels. So they are, and I think there's 4 rinks in there. They are paying for all the electrical costs of the rink, of running the rink, and plus they're paying for a lot of the cost to finance the rink itself. I met with the superintendent of schools, and I gave him copies, and I also sent copies to Marie Zach Nolan of the Energy Committee. I always thought the high school, middle school complex opens up, there's so much tar space there for the parking. Plus you have the 2 flat roofs, you have all that. It just makes for a great, I think, location.
The Energy Committee has talked about that. David Alinsky was very much in favor of that in several meetings. I heard him talk about that. I know that the former business manager of the schools was less interested than,
We have a new business manager.
we have a new
maybe.
business manager, so maybe there'll be some new interest in looking at that.
So, but it was just fascinating going through and seeing what they've done down there. And I just want to make note of the passing of Rosalind Tallerman, longtime town resident with the Council of Aging, who died
Did she?
this past week. She just did a tremendous job. Her family, her husband, Herb was very just an incredible photographer, and he used to do the pictures actually for the Selectmen. I think it was Backrack in
he was-
Boston
he
that he
was the-
worked for.
Vice president of, I believe, male photography for
Yeah.
Backrack. He was, when the Pope visited Boston, he was on the stage
Yeah.
photographing the
Yeah,
Pope.
he took a presidents
Presidents
and
and,
all
yeah.
kinds of people. And she just was very active with the Council of Aging, and I'm sorry to hear that with her family.
It's too bad, yeah, nice lady.
And a couple of things out of my walk. Can you make note, the Niantic sign at Orchard Street is missing, if they could add that. And I don't know, I've been after Ken a couple of times in the summer. We're running out of summer months here, but the bubbler out in front of Town Hall still is not working. It's, as we build up the center of town, it's just another nice thing to have.
It's a very nice one.
Get a thing of water out of that. And any further update on the farm and Harding Street railroad tracks? Is that still?
Not yet, no, I'll get going on that.
And next week, if you've gone by Harding Street, High Street, Route 27, you notice a huge change at the town pound. Eagle Scout candidate Ethan Murby is working on that, and next week and into the first week of September, he'll have a crew down there restoring the town pound. It looks really nice. And I also met with the abutters, Roach Brothers, again being very, very generous, even though it's not their fencing, has agreed in early September to replace the fencing, which is really worn down. Even though it's not their fencing, they're going to replace it along the south end of the parking lot that the library patrons are able to use, and then also along the west end of the parking lot.
Oh, along the,
Part of that's being held up by string and stuff, so it doesn't look good, and all they asked for was a note giving permission from the abutters, which they have done so. So in early September, that will look very nice with all new fencing that will be up there. And as we get into the end of the summer, we've finished a year of our mini town halls, and I just want to see if the board wants to continue that again for another year, and I'll go to set those up.
Sure. I think that worked very nicely, very well.
And same with the meetings with Jack Peterson?
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And it was kind of interesting, in the Parade magazine of the Globe, Sunday Globe, they listed the 14 best downtowns in America. And what I thought was interesting is what, according to this, and the polls of the people, made it a good downtown. And I won't go through all of them, I'll just a couple here. Corinth, Mississippi, it was ranked number 1, population 14,000. And it says their main street, called Fillmore Street, offers a charming blend of the old and the new thanks to the historic buildings that are there. DeLand, Florida, population 28,000. became an artist, and cultural hub with the new art museum that they put in there. Endicott City, Maryland, population 65,000, and again, running through the main street, combined storied history. Visitors can stumble across events ranging from the Civil War reenactments to the free Main Street Music Fest featuring local bands. Excelsior, Minnesota, population 2,000. Again, there are restaurants and historic buildings that line the avenue, and it leads pedestrians to what they call the Common, a 13-acre park that they've built there. Flagstone, Arizona, Rebirth. It says centerpiece is dubbed the Heritage Square, featuring brick paths, outdoor movies, and art festival. Glenna, Illinois, population 3,000, has over 1,000 buildings now in the National Register of Historic Places. Strolling along Main Street is like taking a step back into history. Georgetown, Texas, population 50,000. Again, it's a vibrant gathering place with beautifully restored buildings. Greenville, South Carolina, year-round tree-lined Main Street. Placeville, California, population 10,000. It has monthly stagecoach rides, other historical events, including an iconic bell tower. But it's interesting, over and over again, these places feature history, art, and culture, and a theme, all of which Medfield has. And I think the Cultural Council, Zulo Gallery, the art folks, Gene Mineo and others, by building that, preserving our history, building the art and the culture, is just going to add to our downtown area. And that is all, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
Just want to thank everyone. It's been a great summer, I think, particularly on Thursday nights in Medfield. It was a very good season for Memo for their Thursday night concerts. I think the weather cooperated, I believe, almost every night except maybe one or so. So they had a good season. And with the roof deck open at Zulo and stuff, and Brothers now open, there's a lot of people milling around Medfield, certainly on Thursdays. And this last Thursday was particularly busy. A lot of people milling around, so it's good, nice. Summertime, people are out enjoying the town, which is great
I
to see.
noticed how many people were eating outdoors this summer.
Yeah.
Seemed to be a much bigger, it has never been that way before.
No, it's gonna
I
get.
don't know, what's the weather or people just are doing it more. So.
Oh, and by the way, too, the electric box covers there. Yeah, the one on South Street Extension 27. That's got. I think it's Hannah. Is it Hannah?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. You can see her driving right by. It looks really good.
And that's
I noticed that.
That's my little feature, my story this week is on that.
Oh,
But
okay.
they've done the other boxes too.
Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one
Folks on the
opposite
benches.
Shaw's driveway that's
Yeah.
Rocky Woods.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This one here's the Half
Somebody in a
Factory.
bunny
Yeah, I
costume
gotta
or
see that.
something?
Lowell Mason is down at Dale
Skaters
Street.
and,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a winter
Really?
scene, sort of, yeah.
Really nice. That turned out nice. Really, really nice.
I think it was last Thursday when I was talking to Russ Hallisey, and he said that he had 150 people at the concert.
Yeah, no, it's been really good this year.
Great.
It's been really good this year. Yeah, we've got, the bands are really good that play every time. I mean, they're real, they're
Yeah,
professionals. I mean, they're good.
And that Zulo Gallery deck is just if anybody that hasn't been up there, they really should try to get up there and see it. It just gives you such a different view of the downtown.
Yeah, I mean, they've
Sort
had
of
great
eliminates
season.
the traffic, for one thing. And
Yeah.
You don't see 109. so.
No, different perspective on town. In fact, we haven't been able to sit on the deck the last couple of Thursday nights. It's been so busy. We've been actually inside in the gallery, sitting down and
Yeah.
stuff, because they've had such a good business going. So it's good for them. So Bill and them have been doing a great job there, plugging away.
Yeah.
It's getting there. It really is. So,
Anything else?
Nope.
The only thing that I would mention is that I've been doing a lot of, there's a lot going on in terms of planning the charrette for the downtown, and that's nice to see that there's so much behind-the-scenes work that people are doing on that. And I've just caught some glimpses of it, because I think that's going to be exciting to have everybody focused on how to make the downtown even better. Because to me, it's very exciting to see all these people around the downtown.
Last couple of years, it's picked up tremendously. I think it's really
The
been
what
a
has
huge
picked up?
improvement.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
hear you.
picked up the
It's
past couple
picked
years.
up. It's been a lot more activity, a lot more reasons to come downtown.
Yeah. Yep. Anything of those informational things that you wanted to bring to people's attention, Mike or Chris or
Yeah.
Evelyn?
A couple things I want, Chris mentioned earlier, the water tower bid opening is tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. So we'll, and the Water and Sewer Board will be meeting tomorrow night, Thursday night, to review the results of that, among other things.
Good.
Tomorrow morning, the Permanent Building Committee is meeting at 7 o'clock to discuss the pending completion of the town garage. They moved the furniture in today. The final paving should be done the week of Labor Day, and it's getting very close to being completed.
That's good.
It's
That's
coming
good.
out really
Looks
nicely. It's,
nice.
I think people are gonna be very happy with it. At 8 o'clock a.m., they'll then take up the public safety building design, and they're hoping to have that out to bid in this late fall,
Yep.
early winter.
Good.
The Thursday morning, I'll be going to Quincy to be deposed in connection with the Red Gate Farm suit.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
What
we'll
nice
see
time.
how that goes. That plods along. So, and that's about it, I guess.
Okay, thank you. When you weren't here last time, Mark, we agreed that we would, at the end of every meeting, we would decide what we're going to do at our next couple
Okay.
of meetings.
Sure.
And so we're scheduled at our next meeting on September 2nd to have the Economic Development Committee come in and discuss RFP for Lot 3, but they just did that, so we won't do that. And we have the Medfield State Hospital people coming. Anything else other than
Well, I
Med?
think the Economic Development Committee is, is it the next meeting when the hospital committee's coming in?
Hospital's coming in.
Yeah.
Coming in.
Yeah.
And then the treasurer collector and the accountant will be coming in the next meeting.
Good.
And she may have, need some votes from you in connection with the bond sale.
Sure.
Because that is scheduled for the 24th, so it's coming up pretty quickly.
And then on the 16th, we were going to do the Permanent Town Planning and Building Committee.
Yeah, I'll check with them tomorrow to make sure they
Okay
still
with
want to
that.
come that date, yeah.
Anything else that you guys want to do in September? On the 30th, we have Water and Sewer Board to discuss water tower construction.
An update on that?
I think we
And
also
the
said,
superintendent to talk about the DPW and the cemetery.
I think we also said, at Mike's suggestion, that we were gonna go to the Water and Sewer Board when they meet in September, rather than have
That's right.
them under the lights and
yep,
TV
yep.
cameras here.
Yep, so
We
if you
just
could,
need to know when they meet in September.
okay.
On the 30th also, the treasurer will be coming in to have you sign the bonds.
Sure. Yep.
So she's going to come to 2 meetings in a row then, huh?
No, I think the first one is what, the
Is that right, the
second or
30th?
third?
Wait, do we want the 30th? Because that's like the 5th Tuesday.
No, no.
Or it's the third, okay.
We'll check with her when she's ready.
When she needs it.
When she's
yeah,
ready.
When she, I think they have so many days to get the bonds.
Yeah.
But we've got September 30th as a meeting date. We're not going to meet on the 30th, we'll meet on the 23rd.
Unless we need to sign the
Yeah.
bonds. Yeah.
And Wesley, why don't you come forward so we can recognize you? This is your last meeting, isn't
This is
it?
a big thing. That's it.
Wesley
Outta
Drone
here.
has been our cameraman for how many years, Wesley? How many? 3 or 4. Thank you so much for all your service for the town. We appreciate it. Congratulations on going to college and leaving us behind.
Along those lines, I was watching the news this morning, and I saw where Jack Williams is retiring after 55 years
Yeah.
in media, and they said that he started his first job in radio at 14. So how old were you when you started at cable? 12. So you got a head start on him. So I think he said he's turning 71 in October. So you've
still
got a
remember
long
the
way to
night.
go.
I can still
Nice
remember
job.
the night, Wesley, when I walked out of here and you were driving your mother's car, and I thought, what? He's old enough to drive now? So thank you for everything you've
Thanks for all the
done.
years and all the countless hours. We do appreciate it.
And we expect a 4-0.
And with that, we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.